Welcome to the Nicky Hughes Show, the place where we unearth pure gold in everyday stories. I'm Nicky, your host, and each week I bring you compelling conversations with real people that inspire, inform, and connect. Whether we're diving into the dynamic world of business with business briefs, exploring the mindset of champions with sports shorts, or celebrating the unsung heroes in local legends, this is your space for powerful, impactful stories from remarkable individuals. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's get started. Linda Monahan, the habit boss. So what is that all about?
Well, the habit boss, a lot of people think it's quite audacious, me included, but it's for SEO purposes, really. So It was something to kind of, I suppose I got influenced or inspired by maybe like Sarah Slattery, the travel expert, or, having something at the end of your name rather than Linda Monahan Coaching. So just really from an SEO perspective and to be an authority on something. And it's funny because it kind of conflicts a little bit with my message now, but it's starting to be understood a lot more. So I suppose for me, it was personal because habits really helped me and systems really helped me throughout my life. When I was in corporate, out of corporate, and people, I've ADHD, as we discussed, and people with a neurodivergent quality are like, I can't form habits. And I'm here to kind of say, yeah, you can. And you probably have, but you just don't realize that you have. So it's really, it's probably the habit boss light, and really creating habits your way and to suit you. Yeah. So, people who, my habit is I go to the gym every day. Well, I'd be like, well, just move every day. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym. Maybe you go for a walk, or maybe you do something different. And the movement is the habit as opposed to what you actually do.
Yeah, go back to the SEO piece. If I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that from an SEO perspective, search engine optimization, it's easier to find the habit boss than it is to find Linda Monahan. Is that right? Or do you rise up the ranks quicker with the habit boss?
You probably rise up the ranks a little bit quicker, but it would be easier to find me because I've been around longer than the habit boss, if that makes chronological sense as well. But habits is a huge search.
Okay. So it's the keyword habit that's doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you know what the science behind the algorithm is? So if it picks up the words habits, is it simply it recognizes it, so it promotes it, and therefore it's easier to find?
I don't know the science behind the algorithm. I just know it changes every now and then that you have to. But no, it definitely will be climb a little bit higher because of that.
So the advice is, again, if I'm hearing correctly, the advice is to as well as promoting your personal brand and your personal name, Linda Monahan, we get an email address or a domain name which has a keyword in there, and that helps you to be found easier.
That helped for me, and I suppose I don't know whether I don't know what it was, but for me it didn't sit right. Linda Monahan Coaching just didn't work for me. It personally. Nothing to do with anything outside. I see so many people, and it's like X business consulting or X mentoring, and it's just a personal choice, really, more than anything else. And I wanted to create a brand and a product that was kind of transferable globally, because the biggest aim is kind of to hit America, which I'm doing, and the habit boss is a little bit more in line with what they seek rather than my name.
You're giving me so much fodder here. It's just unbelievable. I've got about 500 questions already. I want to go back to the Linda Monahan piece and your reluctance to, it just didn't sit well with you to have your name Linda Monahan Coaching, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm interested in that. Is that because, as you say, you wanted to go global with a product and a name that is potentially sellable at some point in the future? Or was there a little bit of imposter syndrome going on around Linda Monahan Coaching, and you felt it was a little pompous or a little bit?
I think the habit boss is probably more pompous than Linda Monahan Coaching. No, I don't think I ever really looked into it that deeply. imposter syndrome isn't something that I would kind of suffer with. And if I do, I'll address it straight away and kind of go, why am I feeling like that? One of the big reasons is I have my mother-in-law was like, don't take the name. And I was like, why? And she goes, because you'll spend your life spelling it because there's no G in it.
I did it this morning. When I was trying to get into your internet here at home. Monaghan.
So and that was one of her big keys. And that's kind of been at the back of my head as well. So I spend my life spelling Monahan, which is, the whole family will go, like the county without the G.
Very good, very good.
Nothing very much to do with imposter syndrome, more to do with spelling than anything else as well.
Yeah, great. You've sparked a whole lot of conversation topics like the ADHD, like moving into the United States. So let's go back to the start, shall we? And I'll ask a couple of very simple questions. Who are you? And why are we here on the podcast this morning?
I wasn't born. So my name is Linda Monahan, formerly McGrath. So I am we're sitting in my kitchen in Bray. I grew up about 3 kilometres down the road, so we haven't moved very far. I would say that's probably a neurodivergent thing as well. Nobody likes change. And
oh my God, that in itself. Okay, let's come back to that as well. That's great.
But studied marketing in college, went into FMCG. First of all, had a stint in telecoms, which I advise anybody to work in a horrific area for their first couple of years, and they'll learn telecoms is horrific, or maybe selling emails. Probably don't do that anymore either, but telecoms, cold calling, which is where you learn not to really care about what anybody thinks of you. Went into FMCG, and from there kind of rose through the ranks. So I had worked with 3 companies, Kelkin, Kerry Foods, and then RB, which you know better as Reckitt Benckiser, and kind of finished my career as head of trade marketing in Reckitt Benckiser. So after I had my second child, my employer was kind of like, oh, maybe you're not going to work the 80 hours that you were working, or the 60 hours. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my job. I loved it. It was very high intensity, exactly what I like. But it just didn't suit 2 small kids within 19 months of each other. So
when you were leaving college and looking for a career, was it your goal and your dream and ambition, as we were told at that time, to go and work for a big name company?
No.
Or did you just fall into it?
It's funny. I didn't fall into it. It's funny. I had a friend who worked in category management. And for anybody who doesn't know what category management is, it is designing supermarket shelves and understanding the behaviour behind how people purchase off supermarket shelves. And when I was in 6th year, I just thought this was really interesting, and it's bizarre to think that that's what drove like my career into marketing. And I actually, when I did my leaving cert, I got my points for GIT in Mountjoy Square, but I was one of those people, you know, the way it's kind of, is it true that people with the asterisks, that I got the points, but they have a random selection and I didn't get in?
Oh, right.
So I got the points for the course, and they did the random selection, and I wasn't selected. So I was I suppose I didn't have much coaching on how to fill a CAO form in. I was left to my own devices. So I'd no backup. I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to college. I was very clever, but I had narrowed my choices, which anybody that speaks to me about CAO, I'm like, fill it out 1 to 20 or 1 to whatever. So I had to go back to the drawing board and figure out what I was going to do. So I thought, will I repeat my leaving? And I did enroll to repeat my leaving, and I did 2 days. And I was like, there is absolutely no way I'm going to repeat my leaving. And it happened that I was doing that within a PLC structure.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a further education college that I was repeating my leaving. And I was like, oh, hang on, there's a marketing course here. So I did a course in marketing, a PLC course in marketing, which gave me an extra 60 points in my leaving. And that's how I got into college.
Yep. Very good.
So there's always a way.
For those not listening from Ireland, we have our education system is around two major sets of exams. We've got the junior cert and the leaving cert, which in the UK is the equivalent of the A levels, the O levels, and the A levels. In the United States, I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Your SATs, I probably heard what gets you into university in the States. But so points are very important. And,
and one other acronym as well is FMCG, is fast moving consumer goods. Which if you think about Kellogg's or Reckitt's or whoever it is, that's the business they're in, for those who want to demystify the acronym.
Yeah. So that was it. So got through that. But I went to Australia. I, did a lot of things while I was at college. So I actually left school in 96, but actually didn't leave college till 2003. So I was 7 years because I took years out, and I had different things going on, and it was great. So I didn't do it. I don't really do a lot of things the conventional way. So in 2003, I left college and then started in a telecoms company, and I was there for about 3 years, two and a half years. And I got an opportunity. I was rang up by a girl I went to college with, Amanda, and she was leaving her company, and she was like, "Do you want my job?" And I didn't interview it. She just was like, "I know you can do this." And I went in, and they gave me 10 grand more than I was on in the telecoms.
Nice.
It landed in my lap completely.
This was the marketing job.
In Kelkin. And Amanda had started a project to create the health food sections within the Irish retail industry, and I took that project over. So Superquinn at the time, Tesco, Dunn's, and SuperValue, and we created the Whole Foods and health food sections within there. Wow. So it was a really big project at the time.
Well, it turns out that we are former competitors, and I've just found that out now because I used to work for Kellogg's in FMCG many years ago at the start of the 90s, and I remember you talked about category management. I remember going in to check what was on the shelves in the cereal aisle, and we always came across Kelkin, who were stealing some of our space, and we never looked upon them very favorably. So I apologize if I moved any of your Kelkin boxes at that time.
Yeah, one thing I will have to say, with the learning in Kelkin, I had a boss in Kelkin, Charlie. He was such a salesman, and he had no idea about category management. He thought he did, but he was such a good salesman that his bias was always on the plans. He couldn't understand, what do you mean we only have this market share and that's how much we can have? No. Make sure our rice cakes get that much. I was like, you just can't go into a retailer like that. But you learned a lot of bolshiness from him, if you know what I mean. So that was a good learning ground in the sense, just go in and ask for it. Who cares?
I remember the visual planogram came out sometime in the early 90s. So the supermarket would basically give you a plan. Well, the individual manufacturers would come up with the ideal planogram for their particular brands on the shelves in the supermarket. But then the supermarket would come along and they would say, yes, that is the block where you're going, but you're not having all that space. Because we want some of the space for our own brand products. Did you have that problem?
Well, no, I think essentially when I started in Kelkin, I think it was about 2005, 2006. And what had evolved since then was partnerships more than anything. And if you were category manager, the retailers had figured out that they didn't want to do all this work. They weren't going to be building plans. So they, as with everything, they were always going to squeeze the suppliers for free labor. So we had to work on the plans if we wanted to be the category leaders within Kelkin or within Kerry or within ORB. But you did have to, okay, if there was an extra facing, you were going to get it or you were going to be in prime. But it was effectively an unbiased, piece of work, because if you did it biased, you just weren't put there again.
Yeah, sure.
Way, or you could get away with a few things.
Yeah, and you obviously did a lot of work into the soul of category planning and category management.
Yeah.
There's a huge science behind it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Have you got any real top line takeouts? What's the biggest thing you've learned?
No,
then I'll tell you the biggest thing that I learned.
Eye level is subjective because everybody's different height. And, parents who are like, why is everything on the second shelf? It's like extra power from kids. Like there is different areas of gold on the shelf. And it was dependent on what type of product you had. So if you had a traffic builder, like one of the most craziest categories that I worked within, which I loved because it suited my personality down to a T, was air care.
Right.
And that had so many segments and sub-segments and things going on. But a traffic builder within air care was an aerosol.
Mm.
And if you go into any store now, still, and I haven't worked within air care for nearly 10 years, the aerosols are going to be on the bottom shelf.
Okay.
And they're going to be on the bottom shelf because they're the cheapest product and because they take up the highest amount. So the shelf is going to be a little bit higher. And they're probably, as I say, the cheapest product. They're going to bring traffic because they're the cheapest product and because they're the product that most people who aren't air care buyers. So if you're an air care buyer, there's a particular demographic, there's socioeconomic factors. But if you aren't an air care buyer and you come to the section, you're going to be absolutely overwhelmed. You won't understand it at all, but you do know that the aerosols are on the bottom shelf. So that's all that you have to worry about.
Right.
So if you go to, I would say with cereals, I never actually look, but I mean, if you go to the cereal aisle, you're probably looking at maybe spending 7 or 8 seconds at the cereal aisle.
Yeah.
The air care aisle was 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Oh, goodness. Right.
And like that was throughout my career, that's the highest anybody would spend at a shelf. And it was that's why things weren't in boxes, they were in blister packs, which from a sustainable perspective wasn't great. But if they were in boxes, people would open them, people wanted to smell them. That's why scratch and sniff came along and everything like that. It was one of the most complex categories that I ever worked within. But
so if people were spending a minute and a half or a minute and 15 at the air care section, was the level of sales and the level of margin commensurate with that time that they were spending? So
no, because what our aim was to reduce that. Because if they're spending that long at it, there's a problem because they can't understand it.
Ah, okay.
And
what was the big problem with air care?
They essentially didn't so basically you would have like your aerosols, your candles were your high profit, high margin item. They were going to be at eye level, and everybody associates candles with air care. But then you had all of these ancillary products. So you had your plug-in electricals, you had your Febrezes. When you go into a bathroom and you're like,
the automatic,
automatic ones, the auto sprays is what we called it. You had them. You had things that stuck on walls. You had things that So it was a case of our aim. I think when I started within it, it was probably maybe 1 minute 40, and the aim was always to reduce it because if you reduced it, you knew the confusion was less.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It was
really fascinating consumer behavior. One of the most interesting things I've ever learned about category management and shop layout and so on is a concept called Hokalau. And I learned it many, many years ago. And it comes from Hawaii, I believe, originally. And it's based on the notion that when you tilt your head up 20 degrees, you have the ability to look around you and your peripheral vision opens up so you can almost see behind you. So if you do it now, if you lift your head and actually look around you, it the whole world opens up compared to if your head was down here, right? So that was the reason that a lot of supermarkets actually put their signage up higher in the shopping aisles than having them down lower. Because if you're lifting your head up that 20 degrees to read the sign, you're actually taking in all of the surroundings around you, and therefore the products that they really wanted to sell were optimized at that level for your eyesight. So huckle out, check it out. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So so that was that, and then just progressed through from Kelkin into Kerry, and then into Orby, and I think I probably would have learned a lot of my resolution skills within trade marketing, because you're essentially a referee between marketing and sales. So marketing are like, I want to get X, Y, and Z on the shelf, and sales are like, oh, what budget are you going to give me to? Because I mean, as much as Hello Money is illegal, it still exists.
Yeah.
Like it's still, whether you're in the 90s, in the early 2000s, to explain to anybody, Hello Money is basically giving a brown envelope to get your product on the shelf.
Yeah.
And it was acceptable back then. And but when it started to become illegal, like buyers got fired for, accepting gifts. And I know a few, I won't talk about it now because I'll probably get in trouble, but a few significant Tesco buyers in my time with RB were sacked.
They were released back to the community, as they say.
Yes. Over simple, like not even money. Oh, like when I think about it, I can't do it, I'm laughing. But so there was a case, and now it is just done through LTAs, the long-term agreements that they have. It's done through extra margin. It's done through funding. It's done through funding promotion. And the one I love is, people, oh my God, Dunn's is so amazing. Like 5 off 25, great. Yeah. Dunn's aren't paying for that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell me, is there any hope for young entrepreneurial companies trying to break into the supermarket sector? Because as you well know, and as I well know, there's a huge amount of power that's wielded by the purchasing department of the supermarkets and also the branch managers. Now, I don't know if it's the same today, whether they still have the same level of power. So, for example, when I, as a sales rep, would have gone to the supermarkets, and it might be Dunn's or Quinsworth at the time and Tesco's, I remember one particular supermarket manager would say to us, there'd be 6 or 7 sales reps coming in to get their order signed on a Friday morning, and he would come out, he'd trot out, and he'd say, now I want you to stand on that tile, I want you to stand on that tile, I want you to stand on that tile, and I'll be back when I'm ready.
And people think you're messing saying that.
And it's so true.
Completely honest,
It's completely honest. And then you'd have to wait for him to go in and have his morning tea and then come back out. So and the success of your day was dependent on his mood, right? So my question is, what hope do young companies trying to break into the supermarkets have when they have got to get past the purchasing department for a start, and then the actual branch managers? Is it easier now than it was?
I don't believe, people can correct me, but I don't believe branch managers have any power whatsoever now. I think autonomy,
like the bank manager,
I think autonomy has gone from. I think they do wonderful jobs. If you go into your local supermarket, you'll see they're, it's not like, a manager leaving their post. They're always there. There's always shift managers. There's assistant managers. But as far as making orders, no, it's all, it's automatic. It's what's gone off the shelf is going to go back onto the shelf.
Yeah. So effectively, the head office dictates and determines what's on the shelf. So what does the supermarket manager do then? Is she the health and safety manager? Is she the environment manager? What's her role?
Oh God,
or his role?
I really would say, not an area I'm a great forte with, but I would say their role is to, manage their staff and make sure that aisles are empty and that things are in the right place and that planograms are implemented to get them. Because the pressure is huge. Like I always remember the Tesco in Bray when I was working within it. It's like top 5 in the country.
Yeah.
And it's a small footprint compared to others and everything like that. But the pressure to stay within top 10 and the pressure to, get that turnover and the pressure to not have your wastage and the pressure to, there's so much going on outside of ordering and outside of making those orders that I would say managers are relieved that they don't have to do it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, like it's one less thing that they have to worry about. But yeah, it's still interesting.
Yeah, so marketing became your thing then. You assumed a role in marketing, and then your marketing prowess built and experience built over the years. But you're not still there and with the large companies. Did you enjoy it or not?
I think, and it's funny because I think we have such like marketing is such a blanket term, like a purist from a marketing perspective, like I never was. There's people that I worked with and they would have created new products and they would have created branding colors and they would have created, I didn't do any of that till my own business because it's not the area that I worked with. My job was to solely, and that's what would help, actually talk about going around in circles, that's what would help people trying to get in to stores today. That's what my job was along with the national account manager, was to develop the story on what the product was going to bring to the party, essentially. And that's, if that was advice to give to any small business, it is, what is it going to add? And what's the profitability? What is the margin? What is the supermarket essentially going to make by getting? And sometimes your product doesn't belong in a supermarket shelf.
Yeah.
And that's what people have to understand as well. Sometimes it's not the space to be. So you have to understand, do you want the volume or do you want the value, in the sense that the perceived value as well? And then like smaller companies, I know smaller companies that have drowned because, they thought they were maybe getting into 5 shops and they got into 50 and then they couldn't meet the demand.
Right. Okay. That's really sage advice.
Yeah.
Because if we bring it back to the air aisle, is that what you call it? The air care, the air care aisle. If I, as a young company, have developed a new air care product and I think it smells like the best thing that you've ever smelled, it's like walking into your favorite garden. That's not necessarily the deciding factor for the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's all about the volume. Mm-hmm. Can you keep up with demand?
Yeah.
And what are the margins? So it's really all about the dollars at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. And it's really funny. Air is a funny one as well because, you're not going to have Joe Malone diffuser in a Tesco or a Dunnes. Do you know what I mean? They might.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. It's not going to work for Tesco or for Joe Malone. I remember one of the interesting things, I know we're focusing on air a little bit, but I remember listening to the owner of Brooks and Shoals, and she's actually from Greystones. And if you work in air care, you develop a certain nose for scent, which sounds bizarre, but there's certain scents that people who develop air care, like I'm very middle of the road because I think smells and that are probably my neurodivergent kind of aspect, but I like a citrus, I like a basil, I like a strong lemony smell. Whereas somebody who's developing scents will be like, oh no, that's very run of the mill. That's very, and I remember she had done she was saying, I saw her speaking and she was saying that she had done an overhaul of all of her products and kind of looking at, her product matrix and what was selling and what wasn't selling. And much to her annoyance, her favorite fragrance was Last.
Oh.
But she thought, oh my God, this is so, it's amazing and it's such a unctuous smell and it's so vibrant and it's so luxurious. Nobody wanted it,
right.
So it's a case of sometimes people with a unique product that they've developed can get very close to it and not objectively see that maybe that's not the space for it, or maybe you've developed something that isn't right for that.
And that's where the likes of you comes in, which we'll come to a little bit later, to to give the brand the story and the horsepower behind it to actually get the cut through that it needs on the shelves
exactly.
to showcase that brilliance that you think you have.
Exactly.
You mentioned neurodivergence a couple of times, ADHD. Tell me more about that, about your personal story and that, and then I'd like to maybe understand it a little bit better from a scientific point of view, or maybe that's where we can start. Like, what is neurodivergence? What is ADHD? And how has it affected you in your life?
So neurodivergence is probably the collective term. Like people are, but people, like individuals, are neurodivergent. So sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. But like neurodivergent, there's such a wide array of things. Like dyslexia is neurodivergent, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, autism, ADHD, which is autism and ADHD mixed. Narcissism is neurodivergent.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, and that's why people with autism kind of can be, that close to people accusing them of being narcissists, because it's a very thin line between it. And there's so many more,
Yeah, so neuro being the mind, obviously, that's a question. And divergent means that you're not on the same path as the majority of the populace. Is that what it means?
Absolutely, that's what it means. But if you talk to people within the neurodivergent world, they'll be like, maybe neurotypicals are not on the path of.
Okay. Yeah. It's like the old argument about organic farming and conventional farming. And those that are involved in organic farming will tell you that organic farming is the conventional farming, and then people who use pesticides are non-typical. So it's the same argument there, right?
Like, that's what I always think. Is like, people, you're speaking very loudly, and it's like, well, actually, I can't hear you. Maybe you're speaking too quietly. It's like, there's loads of different kind of things. But for me, I have ADHD, actually ADHD, so autistic as well.
So
small u DHD. I focus in on the ADHD part a little bit more because I've more understanding of that. Basically, what happened was I always kind of understood that there was something a little bit different, and I hate the word different, but just a little bit that kind of didn't seem right. I have a couple of friends from school. I don't really have friends from college. I don't take friends from work. I'm very much kind of insight in mind, you know what I mean? Not that I forget about people.
If I may interject just for a second. So how do you know? I hear this a lot, right? I felt that there was something not quite right. So how did you know there was something not quite right? Because can I assume that you're told the external stimuli that we have in the world from school, from family and so on will tell us that we should be leaning in this particular direction, but you felt that you were leaning in a slightly opposite direction. Is that right?
No, not even down to that. Just down to just feeling like the odd one out all of the time.
Okay.
Nothing, not understanding it, but just looking at other people just coasting through, going, what the heck? Like, do you know what I mean?
Was this from a very young age?
Yeah, would say from a very young age. But even having been diagnosed and looking back, I would say it all came to the fore. Like, I would have developed systems and processes all the way through my life to cope, but I didn't know I was doing that. So, if, say, a neurotypical is going to take a shower, I'm going to take a shower. But a neurodivergent person has about 20 steps before they take a shower. So they have to think about the individual steps that goes into, I have to pull back the shower curtain. You're actively voicing that in your head. Everything is a monologue. Everything is, it's just a little bit harder. And the reason, from a scientific perspective, your frontal lobe doesn't develop as quick as everybody else.
Okay.
So most people's frontal lobes develop by the time they're 25. So they can, like, executive function, making decisions. That's why so many people you see, so many people talking about older men and younger women. Like, if a woman's under 25 and there's a guy in his 40s with her, there's a problem because she hasn't fully developed as a human and he's taking advantage of that. That's, it's like...
Hang on a second. I'll just bring over my can of worms here and I'll open it up, right?
But
that's a really...
Yeah, but that's just, this is genderless as well. Do you know what I mean? Because it's men and women that their frontal lobes haven't fully developed. And it can be up to 10 years later. So your frontal lobe might not develop till you're 35.
Are we talking about the size of the frontal lobe? Or are we talking about
things, I suppose, things don't, even now, things don't have a flow. So it's you have sparks of creativity and hyper focus. And honestly, like, there's times when, and I know that people will agree with me on this, people who have ADHD in particular, times when you can hyper focus on something and you can get a week's work done in 5 or 6 hours, like, easy, a week, just on fire. And then there's other days where it's a trial to get out of bed and to, move. And the biggest thing to understand throughout the whole thing is actually losing the guilt of the days that you don't do it. Because so many of us were just like, who said working from 9 to 5 was a thing? Who said going to work outside your home was a thing? Who said, we have been, the Irish dole system is still 6 days because we used to work Saturdays. So if you claim social welfare, you're claiming based on 6 days because everybody works Saturdays and you only got Sundays off before the 70s.
Right.
So it's like,
I can visualize the whole "the Earth is flat" or "the Earth is round" argument going on here. Who says what? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I don't think they clarify. The Earth is round.
I know. See what I mean? Yeah. But who said the...
I'm clarifying.
Who said the Earth is round?
Oh, right? Listen.
Okay. So, go back to the hyper focus piece. Is that a decision that you make to be hyper focused, or it just happens?
Oh God, no.
And what about the not getting out of bed? Is that a decision that's made, or is that just can't happen?
Yeah. So basically, there is 3 kind of ways that we work on a deadline. So that's why deadlines are really important. So, like, for a person with ADHD, there's only so much information that we could hold in our brains. And, like, I would say that a lot of people will take the Leaving Cert, for example. I crammed for my Leaving Cert, got particularly, like, it was okay, got 2nd class honours in my Bachelor of Science. I wouldn't say I studied a huge amount for that, but I was able to attain the information for the time that I needed it. And we literally have to swap information in and out of our brain to, and it's kind of, it's a funny one. I remember my dissertation. I had the person who mentored me for my dissertation and my second reader. And it's still to this day, it pisses me off. But anyway, my second reader gave me a 75 on my dissertation, like a first. And my mentor brought me down to a 69 because he's like, you did not work on your dissertation every time we met.
Okay.
And he's like, that was the whole purpose of it. And I didn't start my dissertation till March, and I was meant to start it in October. But my second reader was like, this is awesome, this is amazing. And he dragged me down because the whole process.
The process wasn't there.
I couldn't.
But you weren't being marked on the process. You were.
No, I don't think I was being marked on the process. And I do think that now I probably have an argument to go back and say, I have ADHD and you have been discriminatory against me. Because there is no physical or emotional or mental way I could have started that in October.
Okay. So you have to have a deadline.
Yes.
That's number one.
have to have a deadline, but I can't be given that deadline. Yes. So it's kind of like have to have a deadline, but it's like the deadline could be a week, but I'm probably not going to start it till about an hour beforehand. Or depending on what has to be
I've
done.
got about 1,200 alarm bells going off in my head right now. Yeah. Go on. Yeah. Good.
And we're attracted to other neurodivergent people as far as like friends are concerned, as far as associating yourself, as far as kind of finding people on LinkedIn and go, oh, I think I like them. Why? Because maybe, so it's a melting pot, and it's still full of unknowns. And the most frustrating thing isn't everybody a little ADHD? No.
Okay.
No, they're not.
If that is the case, what proportion of the populace?
5%.
So 5% of people have some form of neurodivergence.
Well, probably about 8 or 9%. But as far as ADHD is concerned,
specifically ADHD.
But it's such an insult, because it really negates any experience that you've had. Like we talk about burnout, we talk about it's the exhaustion of masking all day and pretending that you're fine in a corporate environment, and then coming home and needing an hour away. Like I'm so lucky with my partner who I've ended up with. He is so understanding. Like we spend a lot of time apart. We spend a lot of time together, but we know that we can give each other space. And we know that like there's some days where I'll just work away upstairs and, we might have a coffee and, speak for 5 minutes, and that's it, that's it. And having the experience that I've had, being able to like support my daughter in her journey, because I can see the writing on the wall there. And what tends to happen, I was diagnosed first, but what tends to happen is that kids are diagnosed, and then the person who diagnoses gone, well, that there's 25% chance that one of the parents has autism or ADHD or whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, because it's hereditary. It's, we don't lick it off a stone. It's not caused by iPads. It's not caused.
Do we know what causes it?
It's just a deformity in your brain. A deformity is probably the wrong.
Yeah, I understand.
Your processing just doesn't develop. Your brain doesn't develop.
Right?
Yeah, your brain doesn't develop. Yeah. And people think it's, people think it's a label, and it's not. It really isn't. Yeah. It's fine. Like, it's just that it's really sad when it hasn't been picked up. And there's a reason it wasn't picked up. It was the 80s. It was the 90s. You have to give people kind of, not credit. You have to give people an understanding that it just wasn't. It wasn't thought about. It was't. And it had to be extreme versions of it. I mean, people still think that autism is, you're nonverbal and you're non-communicative. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
There's so many women that are autistic, but the doctors said it was anxiety or it was depression, and it wasn't.
Yeah. It is, well, I'm interested to know that if one has a child with a neurodivergence, how does one identify that? What are the warning signs, and how is it best managed?
Yeah.
And then I want to come on to your experience in the corporate world and how did it affect you
I
there?
suppose like this big caveat here. I actually am a qualified ADHD coach, but that's really in the sense of helping adults develop systems for their businesses, for everyday life. It's not, listening to their emotional or mental health or well-being, because basically that's for a psychiatrist or a therapist or, somebody. Like I help with the practical side of things. Okay. If you're looking for emotional support, you're not getting it here. But from a child perspective, and you can be an ADHD coach to a child as well. And I have helped different kids, but obviously the parent is heavily involved. It wouldn't be a one-on-one situation because they have to be there. Personally, I think for safety reasons, but then obviously to follow through on what has been advised. From my perspective with my daughter, obviously the fact that I had been diagnosed, it made the symptoms a little bit clearer for me, that I knew what I was dealing with. And for her, it's very much, she masks all day in school. So she's a great student. And then she'll come home and we get homework done straight away. That kind of builds momentum, you know. And then for an hour or so, she goes to her bedroom and she just decompresses because she's physically exhausted from being the person that school expects her to be. I think the biggest thing at the moment, in especially in Ireland, is the public system is completely overwhelmed with people coming to them. And there's a numerous different things. Like there are just badly behaved children. And then there's kids that are suffering with anxiety, with stress from possibly COVID as well. And then there are neurodivergent kids that are autistic or ADHD. And it's such a fine line to, you know, and that's why the HSE is completely swamped. And from my personal journey, we went to the doctor. The doctor was like, "I'm so supportive, like absolutely can see everything," and referred to Lucina. And Lucina went through all the forms from the school, from us. We're like, no, we're not going to process this.
So who's Lucina?
Lucina there's Lucina and CAMS. So basically these are the HSE psychiatry kind of spaces.
Yeah.
And basically they were kind of like, no, we don't feel that she meets the criteria. And, you know, off the record, well, it's on the record now, but I had a conversation with one of the psychiatrists within Lucina, and they were like, essentially, boys, and this is not to be gender specific because every child presents differently. So boys can present the same way as girls do. Girls can present the same way as boys do. But typically, boys are hyperactive, and that's what people imagine with ADHD, this hyperactivity, this craziness. And it was essentially that there's kids throwing chairs in classrooms and, you know, being violent towards teachers, and they're getting higher up the chain than the kids that are highly masking. And I would say for the likes of my daughter, the hyperactivity is in her mind and not, you know.
And if in her case, it does take a lot of energy to build this mask, and they're doing it from a very, very young age. What is the right advice for parents? Should parents allow the child to go through the system and help them to develop coping mechanisms to deal with the mask? Or should they be removed from the school system into a different environment that caters better to their needs?
No, I don't think I could even comment on that. That's an individual thing. I believe in the school system. So I think that the fact is that if one of your children has ADHD, or there's a high probability that somebody at home has it, and they're not going to be able to cope with managing their education. Or
is there another place that they can go? No. Okay.
No, I mean, and look at all those women like who are amazing fighting for their kids outside the doll, that they have been rejected from. Like, I think one woman was rejected from like 35 schools because they didn't have the facilities, but there is literally nowhere else to go.
Okay.
And I think that another kind of mislabel is that, I'll give you an example. Anyway, we're going to talk about it. The GAA club that my kids are part of, there is a group of kids called the All-Stars, and it's additional needs kids, and there's kids on the spectrum there, and there's, you know, different. But what the GAA club doesn't realise is that there's so many additional need kids on the general teams, and they don't cater for it. You know what I mean? They think that they have to create this team. And it's probably a good analogy for society, that every corporate team, every school yard, has these kids that are model kids, and there's just so much going on. It's like a swan in a lake, and they're paddling really, really hard. That it's not a bad label. It's not people, why do you want to give your kid that label? And it's not about the label. It's actually about supporting the child, because the worst thing you can hear, I know from my own mother, you were so clever in primary school and you were much cleverer than that person, and they did X, Y, and Z with their, and it's like, because they were neurotypical and they could develop a study plan and stick to it.
Sure.
You know,
and is the prevalence of neurodivergence greater now than it was 40 years ago, or is it just better understood now and maybe it's got a higher profile?
Better understood.
Okay, so the numbers of people with neurodivergence has not increased.
Well, it has increased because it's better understood.
Yeah, so it's being better identified now. Yeah. But the numbers of people as a percentage of the population is still 5%, and it was 5% 40 years ago.
Because the population has increased as well.
Okay, so there's no environmental factors like Sellafield that's like contributing to this, is there?
I mean, Joe Wicks was like, suppose kids are on iPads. Absolutely not. Like, because, maybe reduce screen time, maybe, less processed food. But I think that's good advice for any child, not just a child with like a child who's neurodivergent. People. I developed. You don't develop ADHD.
Okay.
You're born with it, and anybody it's so frustrating. Like I exposed. No, you didn't expose to anything. It's there.
Yeah. And you're obviously an ADHD coach. You work with families. You work with individuals, maybe in later life, who have suspected for a long time that there's maybe some form of neurodivergence in their own self, and you help them with that. What about the overarching assistance, and is there an association out there that people can contact, or is there?
There's loads of different things. Like I wouldn't identify, if you Google, there's support groups online. There's business support groups online. There's so much out there, and there's so much available. And, I mean, it's you can't throw a stone then, and there's not something there. So there's loads available. The biggest thing I'd say to people is to just watch. If you think that you might have ADHD and you're going through the process of finding out, the biggest piece of advice I'd give to anybody is find out and get diagnosed from a reputable source, because there's clinics popping up everywhere. And what people don't realize is that a psychotherapist can diagnose ADHD, but they can't prescribe meds for it.
Okay.
And a psychiatrist can diagnose ADHD and can prescribe meds for it. So people are spending thousands to find out their diagnosis. And then it's like, oh yeah, you have to go to such and such to get your meds.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, what? So there is definitely a demand and supply there. And there's these clinics popping up. I'll help you. I'll do this. I'll do that. And with ADHD, whether you choose to be medicated or not, a lot of people, I think the phrase on social media is they raw dog ADHD. So they just go through life not getting medicated. And there's plenty of people who say that when they're on meds, their creativity can slump. They've felt kind of sloppy, or, but different meds work for different people. And it's all about how you metabolize things as well. Like for me, I could have 3 cups of coffee and go up for a nap easily. Do you know what I mean? Things metabolize different in everybody's body. And there's different types of ADHD meds. So there's slow release, and then there's quick release as well. And for me, meds have been brilliant. Like it's like as if there's 100 tabs open in your brain, and you're able to go, that's the one I need today, rather than going through 30 of them to go, do I need that one? Do I need that one? And wasted time to get where you want to go. Whereas it's like, okay, this is what I have to do.
Yeah, yeah. When we were having a chat last week about today's podcast, you mentioned that having ADHD was a pain in the arse. And I hope you won't mind me re-quoting you there. How did it affect you in your corporate life, and what did it lead to?
I suppose, I think I said that because I see so much, it's a superpower. Is it? I think the biggest thing with ADHD, right? So separated, we have like corporate environment. The biggest thing with ADHD for women, and possibly for men as well, because I do think that men go through a hormonal cycle within the year as well. But from a woman's perspective, symptoms of ADHD and can relate to where they are in their menstrual cycle. And they can be heightened or they can be lessened. And I mean, there has been links between PMDD and premenstrual. The 2Ds have escaped me, but basically, it's been so it's like premenstrual tension, but the tension and the stress is so high that you feel like killing yourself.
Okay.
Essentially, and loads of women have been diagnosed. So it's like. And you see people kind of making jokes about it on social media, as in women, like, kind of laughing at themselves. But it's kind of a case of, oh my God, I thought everybody in the world hated me. It just turns out I was due my period. Do you know what I mean? Yes. So it's your ADHD symptoms are going to be heightened at those times. And then it's kind of understanding your energy. So you're like, get your period, you go into your follicular stage starts that same day, but basically you've got your menstrual stage for 5 or 6 days, then your follicular stage for about 7 days. So the 7 days in the month where women are peak, like absolute on fire. Nothing is going to stop you. You are going to rock the gym, rock family life, rock your business, rock corporate. And then day 14, 15 is ovulation, peak rocking everything, peak networking. If it always network mid-cycle, always communicate with others, like mid-cycle. If you have to do a podcast mid-cycle, your energy, everything is off the charts. And then 2 weeks, you're going into your luteal stage and everything slows down again, and your hormones. And basically, I always say to my clients, within your luteal stage, do all your creativity work. So your brain is on fire, but your body mightn't be on fire. Your body is a little bit slower. And then that's for 2 weeks. So there's 1 week out of 4 where you're absolutely on fire.
Okay.
And people are like, it's not about equality, it's about equity, and it's about understanding that. Because when you start to understand that my energy is on fire for 1 week out of the month, and people are like going to the gym and, this comparison with men and everything like that, you can't do what men do because you haven't the energy to do it.
Right.
Well, and then, you do this cycle for X amount of years, and then you have menopause or perimenopause. It's just going through life with, and then having ADHD on top of that. And it's so funny. A lot of my close friends are going through perimenopause at this point in their lives, and their symptoms. And that's why people are being diagnosed or misdiagnosed, because their symptoms are very similar to perimenopause. And anybody that has gone through perimenopause, imagine going through that your entire life. And that's what ADHD essentially can be.
And what does this mean for you in the work environment?
I suppose people who have ADHD, the masking piece, and that's why masking is a good thing as well, because you have to kind of bite your tongue. But, I sat with my daughter's doctor 2 weeks ago, and he was like, there's no in between. Like, to hear it was lovely to hear from him. And there's no in between as far as anger and temperament is concerned. Like, and that's where masking helps, because you have to manage your anger within a corporate environment, within a school environment. But you lose your temper at a rate of like knots, like 0 to 100. And, and it could be over the simplest of things.
Yeah.
And you've lost your absolute shit because you have ADHD, not because of anything else. So you have to manage that within a corporate environment. And
if you don't know what it is, or if you don't know what's happening, that's a problem.
And that's why you have to, why am I getting so annoyed, and why am I getting so frustrated? And, then there's a deep sense of fairness and what's right. And it's very hard to sit in a corporate environment and see people get promoted because they just don't offer anything to a team. So people are promoted out of positions because they're shit at them. And the manager wants to get them off their team when, you see things very clearly, and, there's always kind of, there is a bit of a sixth sense, this person's really nice, and you're looking up and going, my God, like, you can kind of, you understand things.
Yeah. And it's not because you're a caustic so-and-so, it's because you have that extra ability
It's not even an extra ability. It's pattern recognition.
Okay.
So it's not about, like I said, sixth sense there. It's not really like there's people, your superpower. No, it's pattern recognition. We're really good at pattern recognition. So if you've been around somebody who hasn't been, the best person to be in your life, you can notice it straight away as you go on in your life.
That's a great trait to have, a great skill to have as a coach.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, it's that, you have to have a lot of self-awareness. And I would say to people watching as well, a lot of people watching probably have been on kind of some sort of healing version. And I actually did a social media post about it the other day. There's so many people at the moment losing a lot of weight for different reasons. One of them being GLP or Mounjaro, gastric bans, doing it conventionally. Who cares? Like, that's anybody's choice to lose weight, whatever way they want to. Like, it's nobody's business if whoever is getting help, because, if you can get help to lose 5 stone, more power to you,
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you're miserable at one weight, you got to be miserable at that, then skinny weight as well.
Right.
Such a horrible word.
Yeah.
But you have to do the work to understand, why are you eating? Why are you emotional eating? Are you not emotional eating? And so many people now are not doing the work and then looking fabulous. So they've done the external work.
Yeah.
And the internal work hasn't been done. And they realize, I think I said, that they're the same miserable bitch that they always were.
Yeah. And if there was a percentage, so if we take the mental side of losing weight and we take the physical side of losing weight, are they 50-50 in importance or in...
God, I don't know, actually.
Or is the mental side 80%?
Maybe there's statistics. I have no idea. But I would say, I, as someone that, I wouldn't say struggled with their weight, because I was always a stone up or a stone down, depending on how happy I was in life. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I do believe that the years like
we
this
oscillate.
Yeah, but Christmas, your birthday, summer holidays, when we exercise more at certain times of the year, and it's just a way of life. But I do think that there's, I think there's people that are very self-aware, and then there's people that are not self-aware at all. And if you're, if you're getting a little bit of additional help, brilliant. But if you're not self-aware as to why you feel the same way you did at 15 stone as you do at 10 stone, then...
And is there any research that you know of where it points to a correlation between people with neurodivergence and weight management, weight control?
Oh, no,
I don't. Weight increase?
No, I don't think so. But impulsivity is high with neurodivergent individuals. So,
however, if you're able to focus, on the weight reduction better than somebody with.
Yes. So works both ways. Definitely works both ways. So, very high binge eating with ADHD.
Yes.
Very high, because a lot of the times people will have forgotten to eat during the day. They might be hyper focused on something, or, you're getting the kids ready and then you realize, I haven't actually had lunch, or I haven't had, and it comes to dinner time and you end up having like your dinner and then about 3 bars of chocolate. You know what I mean? So it's just, you can tend to binge eat. And what a lot of people with ADHD do that understand that is that they find foods that they can binge eat on that won't lead, that are healthier.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, I mean, for me, weight isn't a huge, like, it is what it is. I'm mid-40s. I'm not starving myself anymore, that way. So.
Yeah. You mentioned that sometimes people with a neurodivergent are attracted to other people with a neurodivergent because you can see similarities in each other. I'm fascinated to know what it's like, and I'm not suggesting this is the case in your house, but I'm fascinated to know what it's like in families when both parties are neurodivergent.
Well, and it does happen a lot that somebody with ADHD will end up with somebody that's autistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, like that. They, that there's some form there, but I don't know really. Like, as far as my partner is concerned, I don't know. I just know he's a lot of patience.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think the biggest thing is that if there's an ADHD parent and an ADHD child in the household, then it's just sparks. So you have to learn to walk away.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have to learn great patience, and you have to learn that you're the adult and they're the child. And I think that's probably a huge lesson even now, with my own parents, is that, like, even when my kids are 30 and 40, always remembering you're still the adult and they're the child.
Yes.
No matter what age they are.
And to be very clear, the hard line with kids who have ADHD or a neurodivergence, the hard line is not necessarily the way to cope with it. Yeah. It's completely not the way to cope with it.
Well, from my personal experience.
Yeah.
So if things are kind of going out of control, the best way to deal with it is a hug and kind words.
Okay.
Which.
Do they learn from that?
No.
Okay.
Because it's impulsive. It's always going to be there. So that's why I like, it was funny, I was filling out a form a couple of weeks ago and it was like about discipline, and the discipline has to be immediate. Like grounding isn't going to work because 3 days in they're like, why am I grounded? Because I can remember.
What about removing the iPad?
Yeah, definitely. Instantaneous. Something that's immediate. If they were going to do something that day, you're not going.
Okay.
Or if they, something that you can follow through with.
And is that to show them that there is a consequence to every action? Yeah. Okay, so that's
for me, like, that's how I deal with it. Other people will deal with it so differently. But for me, it has to be instant. It has to be at that moment. They have to feel it at that moment. But it has to be at that moment. But you have to recognize, has it gone too far? So we can see, myself and Dave can see when things are kicking off, by sounds, by how tired she is, by this, by that. If we see it, we can diffuse it really quickly. But if we don't diffuse it, it might explode into something. And then disciplining when there's an explosion is just, it's exhaustion on both sides.
If we were to look at the state that you've just described with a child and looking at it, in a bell curve, and it starts off here, and you can see it starting. You can see it starting. It reaches a peak, and then all of a sudden it trails off and it's gone.
Yeah.
You want to intervene at the very peak, is that right?
No,
or even before.
Well before.
Well before.
Yeah,
because
I mean, parents that watching this will listen to will understand what well before is with their kid.
Okay.
Like they, if you've experienced it, you can see it.
If you try to intervene at the very peak, have they the ability to even hear you?
No.
Okay.
No, like they just shouting. Like I'd say our neighbours think that we kill kids.
Yeah.
But kill one of them but screaming and shouting and absolutely nonsensical. And there's it's just kind of walking away and letting them have that, because it will only last for a couple of minutes.
Sure.
In my case, some other people, it might last for a lot longer.
Yeah.
In our case, it will only last for a couple of minutes.
So the calm approach, understanding the parent-child,
really
difference there, or the pecking order, if you like, and then the ability to step away and defuse the situation, allow them to go off to their room, do what they need to do, and then come back when the state has passed.
Yeah,
right?
Ideally,
But
then there are times when you're going to lose your shit too.
Okay.
Because you have ADHD. And you're like, you're grateful. I gave you this and that. And then you turn into your mother and you're like, oh my God.
Okay.
And the biggest thing there is apologizing after you've done it and teaching them that that's not the right reaction to it. So learning patience and learning how to say sorry are two big keys with me raising my kids as well. You know what I mean? Understanding when and where you have to apologize to your kids is huge.
Okay. Now that you know what you know, and now that you've experienced what you've experienced, and now that you've grown up with this, and you've finally got answers to all of the things that made you feel a little bit different along the way, from a work perspective, from a career perspective, how keen are you to go back into that corporate world with these learnings and with this experience?
God, yeah.
Would you do it?
I have done, and I've done certain workshops and everything like that, but I actually just get the heebie-jeebies when I go back into that environment. It's really not for me. And it's funny because when I left corporate, I opened up a Pilates studio and I had great success with that. And then I started the podcast, which was called Corporate to Calm. And then that was the business as well. And I had to just move away from that because I was just attracting corporate clients.
Right.
And the money was fabulous, but it just did not align.
So what did Corporate to Calm do?
So essentially a lot of the same things as I do now, but it probably just wasn't. It was a good name for the podcast, but probably wasn't a great name for the business. So it just, because the word corporate did attract a lot of corporate.
And what were you focusing on?
So focusing on helping people within business, but the Corporate to Calm podcast was really talking to people, mainly women who had decided to ditch their corporate life and start a business or make life-changing choices and that.
Why do people leave their corporate life? And this is absolutely a subject dear to my heart.
You know why you left.
Yeah, and do people generally leave for real and true reasons of ideology or philosophy? Or is it just a pain in the arse in the corporate world?
There's so many reasons. Ideology, having a great life, pursuing a passion. And then there's people that are in corporate 20 years and they get a nice big fat check at the end of it and they decide to leave.
Do you think most people are doing it for the paycheck?
Some are, yeah, definitely. And that's fine. But I think that, for me, I mourned when I left corporate. It was a grief process because basically I wasn't aligning with my boss at the time. I still liked my job. But the environment was toxic. And probably had I left it 6 months, that environment completely changed. And I'd say I would have been happy going back.
So at that point, had you made a decision to go your own road?
Yes.
At that point, were you fully up to date with your ADHD or was that journey just beginning to understand what was
No, I
going on?
don't even think that was on the radar.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
But you had made the decision to go your own road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I trained to be a PT, qualified as a Pilates instructor, and opened my own studio, and had my own studio till 2022. And then just decided that that wasn't for me, because I kind of thought that I was impacting a certain amount of people, but it wasn't about kind of, well-being or anything like that. It was about losing weight.
Yeah.
If you're doing Pilates, and you're eating 3 bars of chocolate, first you're not losing. And I was like, I don't want to be helping people lose weight or be the reason that you think you're not losing weight, or weight just got way too involved in it, and it just didn't suit me. So I decided to move into the business arena and helping kind of well-being businesses and that. And then it's just kind of evolved into helping ADHD entrepreneurs, but a lot of my clients are not neurodivergent. It's just kind of an avenue for neurodivergent entrepreneurs if they want it as well. But a lot of my clients are not, and it works out fine too.
Okay. So then if I understand this clearly, you're now a career and business coach stroke mentor, or are you a marketing department, or what? What do you do?
Say I help businesses get to the next stage, and I help women get to the next stage. So depending on where they are. So not specifically focused on marketing, but that tends to be kind of the arena that I help most.
Yeah.
But all aspects of business.
Yeah, and particularly digital marketing, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's that like, and where did you learn that? And
oh God, yeah,
is that a journey in itself?
Like, I suppose that was a journey in itself. I suppose from a digital marketing perspective, there's, specialists that do it and do it way better than I do, but it just comes part of the bag and baggage with me as well. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So there's a lot of social media. There's a lot of, I suppose one of the biggest keys for me is helping people with their own real estate, if that makes sense. So one of the key areas is we are so focused on developing our Instagram accounts, or our LinkedIn, or our TikTok. And essentially that's somebody else's platform, and you're just playing a role in somebody else's platform. When actually, if you developed your own website and your newsletter or your email, newsletters, and that's your real estate.
Okay.
And that's where your name is. And if somebody has gone to the bother of connecting with you there, they're probably more likely to convert into a client.
And then do you use the social media to drive people to your website? Is that okay?
Drive people to the website, to different offers. That's what I do, but that's what I teach my clients to do as well.
Okay. All in Ireland or across the world?
Across the world, yeah.
Across the world, okay.
Yeah, and it's really, the key is kind of, it's visibility as well. And I think that's one thing, and visibility and kind of confidence. But with the neurodivergent entrepreneurs, it's kind of teaching them how to accept rejection, because that's one huge thing that, there's a lot of sensitivity around rejection with neurotypical people will just be like, yeah, whatever. They said no, that's fine. Whereas it could, depending on what type of ADHD you have, a no could,
the world could be falling down.
A catalyst effect, and it's kind of understanding. I dealt with a client, and they would send out proposals to people, but they would send them out through their virtual assistant. And the virtual assistant wouldn't tell them if they were rejected. They'd kind of sit down a week later and talk about it then. but
Okay.
she couldn't see the no coming into her email box.
Okay.
So that no went into the virtual assistant's email box, and the virtual assistant managed them. But that's how no's affected her, and that was how she dealt with it, and that's fair enough,
Okay, so she just got the yeses, which
she wouldn't even get the.
Oh, she wouldn't get the yeses
because it was just the anxiety of even getting that type of, seeing who the email was from, or
yeah.
So that was one thing that, people say delegate. She just delegated all her proposals out to a virtual assistant, and they would be sent. Actually, it looked quite professional, sent on behalf of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. How do you get new clients?
Word of mouth, social media. I would say, that's about, and then networking, which is word of mouth essentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You were off in sunny Scotland last week. What, emceeing an event?
God.
What was
they
that
were
event?
giving out to me. They said I brought the rain with me as well. I emceed an event. It was really good. I've been at a few events. It's so funny, and I've spoken at a few events. And actually, what was different about this one, it was a remote Alba, it was called, and it was jam packed, but nobody spoke apart from me because I was the MC. But it was all about workshops. So it wasn't having, this is what I do and this is why I'm so great. But it was a case of the person who was the keynote speaker was essentially the workshop facilitator. So they got to say, this is what I do, but this is going to help you. So kind of workshops were all about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And every time slot there was 3 workshops. So I think they managed to run about 20 workshops on the day. And there was kind of healing circles and sound baths and fitness classes at the same time. And
Sounds great.
It was really good.
And did you study this and prepare meticulously, or did you do a typical ADHD and just turned up?
Yeah, I don't prepare for any.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a proposal for a client, I'll prepare for that. But
Yeah. Okay.
Like if I was speaking at an event, I'd do very little prep for it or anything like that. I know that sounds.
Do you ever try to prepare and you just go, F this, I'm not.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because, I know I can speak on a certain topic. I wouldn't speak on something that I didn't feel I was an authority on, and that I think that's probably one thing. I have experienced with my ADHD, and I used to always I had a friend in particular, and if I was fighting a point or if I was making a point, she'd always go, no, Linda's right. And they'd go, why did you say it? Because she'd never fight a point if she wasn't right. And I let things go very easily. But if I know I'm right, I'm like a dog, but I have to be factually right.
Okay. In your work, do you see a higher prevalence of neurodivergence in entrepreneurs than you do normally?
Well, no, because I can't. Like, I can tell who is and doesn't realize it yet.
So you've got a radar.
Yeah, but I think everybody does.
Do they?
think well,
Like I came into this conversation today, honestly, with very, very low levels of knowledge about neurodivergence and or ADHD or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think I represent a large slice of the population. I think most people are ignorant to it.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's a gross assumption on my behalf.
Maybe, I think a lot of people are afraid of it.
Yeah.
Possibly as well. Do you know what I mean? They don't understand. And I think it's very sad. Like there's a lot of people just don't understand terminology, and they don't understand,
Yeah.
It's like, people using the phrase woke. Oh, woke is so bad. It's like, no, woke just means that you're kind to other people.
Would you believe that I actually don't know what woke means? I've listened to it.
Nothing. It means nothing. It's just a word. It's a terminal. Like I hate using. Like I'm not even giving them any fodder, but it's you care about other people.
Yeah, and is that your purpose? Is your purpose to demystify neurodivergence?
No,
or have you done a lot of work on your purpose?
No, I wouldn't. It's funny because purpose and passion. I think sometimes people with ADHD, they pursue their passion because that's what excites them and everything like that. And they have to, because if they didn't, they'd be bored.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't do the work. Do you know what I mean? So you have to create something that you really love, because if you don't do that, you're not going to work in your business.
So this brings me back to the corporate piece. If your work in the if somebody's work in the corporate world doesn't align 100% with their passion in life, it's going to be very difficult for that person to remain happy in the corporate world.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Or in any type of job. It doesn't have to be the corporate world.
I would say so, but there's so many people doing it. And it depends, like, what's your remuneration at the end of the month as well. So what's your responsibilities? What's your, I would say I'm so privileged, and probably as are you, to have been able to leave that environment. Because so many people can't.
Yes.
From a monetary perspective, and not having support to do so, and not having, the backup of somebody else to do it. Do you know what I mean? So like when I left, I had the backup of a small amount of money, and the fact that Dave was gainfully employed, and the fact that I created a school of Pilates very quickly. You've left on the back of you're creating a business and you're building an empire. But
very small empire at the moment.
But and then a wonderful feast up in Meath as well of tunnels and
So I think what I'm trying to angle at here is, if a person goes through their career working wherever, doesn't have to be in the corporate world, working for a company or doing a job, and it doesn't align fully with their passion and desire, right? But they do a really good job, and they're very talented, and they get well paid and all that stuff, right? I guess what I'm asking is, if that person moves into self-employment, or if that person moves to do something that absolutely aligns with the reason that they're on this earth for, are they going to go to the stars, or is it going to be just as difficult for them to make it happen?
I think probably just as difficult, but more chance of going to the stars, if that makes sense.
Higher chance of getting it.
Because you're interested in it, and and there's a lot of other factors out there. And I mean, we've chatted so much, and I say people are like, oh my God, what, there's a lot of, I'm not even going to get into it now, but for me personally, I believe there's a lot of astro factors, and there's a lot there's a lot of things aligning with, birth dates and birth charts, and so it's like different things have, and I think I said it at the start, for whether you're neurotypical or whether you're neurodivergent, the biggest thing that we can give ourselves is grace. And, things, I think the word should, can be lost, because it's could with shame, I think, because it's basically, and that's not a unique thought, or it's a well thought idea, that, it's taking days off without guilt. It's not doing things without guilt, and just refueling when you can, and taking time out when you can, and understanding. I think the biggest thing we can do is understand, our patterns, because the patterns are there, and understand when we work and when we don't work, and that's why if you work with, in a group program, or if you provide courses, or if you work in a one-on-one, as a neurodivergent, the deadlines and the timelines are great, but actually building passive courses and building passive pieces for income are brilliant as well, because then you don't have to be on every day, because you've already created what's selling for you, and that can work really well for you as well.
Yeah. Wow, I'm neuro-fascinated by you and by what you do, I have to say, because, you know, for many, many years, I've felt that I personally am a person that's very aligned with the seasons, for example, right? Which is why I'm so interested and fascinated with farming.
Right? But I don't mean to interrupt, but a lot of men, I talked about the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
But men would be aligned. They say that their cycle is quarterly, and that would be in line with the seasons.
Yeah, and it is absolutely true for me that I am very focused, hyper focused for about a 12-week period.
Yeah.
Okay, and that aligns with the seasons as well. So you've got a planting season, which is 6 or 8 or 10, 12 weeks, whatever it is. But as a person, I need to know that there's an end to that season. I need to know there's a little bit of downtime, and then you go again, right? And that's why farming is of such importance to me, you know. So there's a lot of what you're saying in this as well.
Yeah. So it's and it's basically like what happens in a month for women or whatever can happen within 12 weeks for women or men as well. Like, do you know what I mean? Or whatever you identify as. But it's really interesting. But that's the thing. What I've been saying is that understanding your patterns, you understand your patterns. And I think you do get to a stage, if you have your own business, it's a must, because you understand when you work well, when you don't work well. And sometimes, you know, planning is all well and good, like an annual plan, or, you know, I think that works for some people. I really can't plan beyond 6 months because it's too overwhelming. I'll have like things that I want to hit, like 1, 2, or 3 over the year. And then, but some days you wake up and it's like, oh, I'm just not doing what I said I was going to do today.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, but just have, for me, it's like 3, like it's very generic. It sounds very generic, but it is. It's very basic. Have 3 things that you want to accomplish, but one of them has to make you money.
Okay.
You know, and, you know, it's all very well reading literature like Eat the Frog. Oh my God, if I ate the frog, What
does Eat the Frog mean?
There's a book called Eat the Frog.
Right.
And it's basically the whole mentality that do the hardest thing first. If I did the hardest thing first, I'd be still working on it at 6 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Do a couple of easy things first where you can go, God, I'm like feckin' wonderful. Like, pat me on the back and get the momentum down from there.
So does it also apply to people who, and again, I'm using a selfish example, I am fabulously brilliant at 4 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I can see my motivation levels drifting off and I have to go outside and do something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So therefore, what you're suggesting is that the world that we've been groomed into living in an office from 9 to 5 is actually perhaps a very unnatural world for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. You know, definitely. And there's like, I know so many people, and they'll work from 8 at night till 2 in the morning. You know, it's whatever. Like, it's like talking about sleep, and, you know, you need to get 8 hours. You need to, and it's like, that's just not feasible for so many people.
Yeah.
You know, you need to get as much as you can get and what suits you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're a new parent, you're not getting 8 hours. You're getting broken sleep. If you have teenagers or people who you know, over 18 living in the house with you, are you thinking about them coming in at night? You're not getting 8 hours. You know, are you stressed about a business? You're not getting 8 hours. So it's all relative to where you are in life. So you can't, you know, I think the biggest understanding is that, you know, people make generic sweeping statements, and that's fine, but like, everybody's individual and everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't make you popular with Donald and Elon, does it?
I know, God, horrific.
Yeah.
But like,
hey, listen, I could stay and chat all day, but I'm really keen to know one particular thing. Are you on the right track? And after our discussion today, I think we both know what that means.
Yeah.
Are you pointing in the right direction? Is your North Star strong, or is it something that you don't even consider? And what are your key goals for the next 6 months, which is what you like to focus on?
Yeah, I like, it's funny. I used to kind of surround myself with people that were like, I'm going to make millions, and it was all about money. And when I realized that, I just became so much happier, and I think for me, I know for me that the goal is happiness and being happy within our family unit. Like I would say the first 4 years of being a mother, like I wouldn't say I liked it extremely well at all. I did everything that I could for them. I mean, they were both breastfed till about 10 months. They were looked after. But I probably was tired and just miserable and starting a business and creating a business. And now for me, it's about being happy. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, but I do prioritize myself before my family, because if I'm happy, they're happy.
Okay.
So, I need just time. And that's why it's funny, because, I have to work on my business in the space that they're in school. But sometimes I just don't. And I'll just veg and have some me time, because that's the only time away from them that I have. And that sounds very callous, but I don't mean it like that as well.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. Maybe. But I think priority is the four of us. And I have a couple of goals. Like, I have a number in my head. I have next stage for the business in my head. But for me, it's really helping people understand that systems and processes are just the easiest thing to adapt to your business. And sometimes it's not about it's not about the technology. Do you know what I mean? Because technology is going to be there, and you just but actually it's understanding the benefit of having an email that is going to be scheduled to go out to like 20,000 people, or having a workflow that's going to be scheduled, or having social media prepped for 30 days for you that you don't have to think about. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's where the guilt lies with when we take time off. It's like, oh, there's so many like other things that I could be doing, but actually if they had them done, that would alleviate some of I should be doing something else, but it still won't, but it'll alleviate a part of it. So it's really, within professional life and personal life, just helping people understand that, if they do this, then the result will be that. But what this is all dependent on who they are. Do you know what I mean? So there's no definitive, I will help. Like, I just know I can help you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about you and your clients and prospective clients, and I'm thinking about the word value, right? And I'm wondering in my head, what is that value that you're bringing to entrepreneurs that are in the second or third phases of their journey, which is your target market? And I'm hearing a lot of value, right? I'm hearing the value of being real.
Yeah.
Number one, I think that's coming across really loud and clear. I think you're bringing value in the systems and processes and the technical knowledge that you're bringing around developing markets, developing social media, and so on. And most of all, I think you're bringing value in time management and peace to an entrepreneur, because in the world of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of madness going on out there. There's a lot of stuff going through your head. There's a lot of stuff coming at you, and there's a lot of stuff you have to do to keep going and keep driving on. And you seem to bring a calmness, maybe a corporate calm, right? You seem to bring a very level-headed it's going to be okay approach if you do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You got to do the work, but you're going to get there in the end if you just manage to keep calm.
And I think that's the thing. It's that, you do have to do the work, but it really depends on what your individual goal is, like I say. And it's really a case of, like, what I want to do is increase revenue, make you money, give you back time, and give you peace of mind, as like within those systems as well. And there probably is an essence of calm. I'm not going to be for everybody. And I mean, if you're looking to be an Elon Musk, I'm definitely not going to be for you. But it's just bringing people on and ensuring that they have the right tools for the next step in business, for sure.
What a way to bring this fascinating discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
And how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, we can, across social media, the Habit Boss across social media, thehabitboss.com for my website, and Linda Monahan without the G, like the county, on LinkedIn. And if you go on to social media, I've so many bits there for free, because obviously I want to offer value to people that may not have the funds to invest in themselves right now. But honestly, guys, invest in yourself. It's the biggest thing, and it's the only way that you're going to grow is by spending money on you and your business. So there's plenty of stuff there. Like, we have a 30-day social media plan for entrepreneurs. So it's really just working out for 30 days and systemizing and getting it all in there, and plenty of things for
and if you're a person that has been listening to this podcast and you recognize some of the symptoms of neurodivergence and you want to know more about it, please get in touch. But the main message is that it's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's there. There's not a lot you can do about it, but understanding it better and maybe maximizing the gifts that it brings you is the key, isn't it?
That's it. And understanding and acceptance, and realizing that it's not the drawback that it's portrayed, and realizing that it's not the superpower that it's portrayed either. It's just part of your life. And
Linda Monahan, it's been a real pleasure. It's been great fun.
Cheers.
And I have a strong feeling that this is not the end. It's just the beginning. So
completely.
So thanks a lot.
Thanks,
and all the very best.
Thanks for having me.
See you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Nicky Hughes Show. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your friends. It really helps us to grow and reach more amazing people like you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to connect with us on social media or visit our website at nickyhughes.com. You can also follow the show's updates and get in touch with today's guest through our socials. Make sure to join us next week, where we'll be getting to know another legend from the world of business. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep uncovering the gold in everyday stories.